Hello and welcome. I am Thomas Porteous and you are watching The World Report. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines. The Israel-Hamas hostage prisoner swap begins as Hamas hands over the first 2 of 6 Israeli hostages. 4 more are expected to be handed over soon in return for 602 Palestinian prisoners. US President Donald Trump reverses his statements on Russian aggression and the origins of the war in Ukraine. This follows his call for a direct meeting between Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, M23 rebels advance deeper into the eastern region. These developments prompt US Secretary of State Marco Rubio to call for an immediate ceasefire. The United States pressures Ukraine to sign a mineral and resources agreement. The US cites a return for military and financial aid from the Biden administration. President Zelensky expresses hope for a fair result in the deal. In a significant diplomatic move, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Kenyan President William Ruto have called for an immediate ceasefire in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo as rebel forces continue their aggressive advance. M23 rebels, reportedly backed by 4,000 Rwandan soldiers, now control large swathes of the region, including the South Kivu capital, Bukavu, and the strategic city of Goma. The United Nations Security Council has condemned the offensive, urging Rwanda to halt its support for the rebels and withdraw from DRC territory. Meanwhile, the DRC government has freed opposition leader Jean-Marc Kabund, a former ally of President Felix Tshisekedi, who had been imprisoned on the charges of contempt. His release follows growing domestic and international pressure amid the escalating conflict in the east, raising fears of a broader regional war. We are joined by guests to discuss this further. We are firstly joined by Himanshu Bhatt, senior journalist joining us from Gujarat. We're also joined by Major General A.K. Sawach, defence expert in New Delhi. And we're also joined by Dr. Levi Nadu, political analyst located in South Africa. Dr. Nadu, I wanted to come to you first with this question. Why are we seeing such prominent advancements of the M23 rebels, and what are their objectives in taking these eastern regions of DRC?
Good afternoon to you. Good afternoon to my fellow panelists and the viewers at home. This has been an ongoing conflict for some time. It appears to be influenced by a number of factors. One of the factors would be the inability of the DRC government to take care of the citizens that are found on the eastern part of their country. And these citizens would therefore feel neglected, and they get the support from the Rwandan government. At the same time, there are issues that will therefore relate to the resources, mineral resources that are found in that area, which appears to be attracting a lot of interest from those that are local and those that are from outside. Equally, there are people that appears to be influencing this conflict, and mainly those that are coming from outside because they've got an interest in what they might get in such areas. Now you have got regional and continental bodies that are doing their best to ensure that there is peace and stability, proper governance and services are supposed to be delivered to those people, and indeed have lasting peace. But the unfortunate part is that there are those who appears not to be interested in ensuring that there is peace and stability in that area, And that is why we're seeing the M23 rebels
Yes.
appearing to be gaining strength and momentum in ensuring that indeed they destabilize the area in their own favor.
Yes. Major General A.K. Sawatch, how does the involvement of neighbouring countries, particularly Rwanda, influence the dynamics of this conflict?
No doubt, as far as Rwanda is concerned, they are playing a role by backing M23 rebels, which are fighting in the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of Congo. And they have been supporting them in spite of the warning given by the also United Nations Security Council to have a ceasefire and return back to their old location. But the Rwandan force has been basically supporting the rebels which are of M23. No doubt, as far as the eastern portion of DRC is concerned, that is totally in control of rebels. They have basically control their capital Goma, then Bakov, and the other major towns. And slowly and steadily they are advancing. There's total chaos and confusion. The people are looting the basically shops. There is a humanitarian crisis, and the MONUSCO, which is basically United Nations peacekeeping force, they have been also attacked. So
Yes.
overall, the situation seemingly looks to be quite bad. And as the Secretary of State of U.S. Marco Rubio has also said that the ceasefire should take place immediately, the fighting should stop. But that has not made a much impact on ground. And you find the situation is very fluid. The Burundian army is supporting the DRC, and they are there still in DRC in the eastern portion. They are basically fighting against the rebels M23, which is totally backed by Rwanda. So overall, the situation is still critical. Things are not coming in control. And I fully agree with my co-panelists. The main reason is the eastern portion of DRC, which is rich in the mineral resources like gold and coltan, which can be used basically in computers and semiconductor, is also one of the region when a number of countries want to spread, including Rwanda. And the second thing is failure on the part of the DRC to govern in a professional manner. So overall, it looks as if the situation is still very fluid, and it will take some time the things to be under control in spite of the warning given by the United Nations Security Council.
Yes, Himanshu Bhatt, M23 rebels are walking into regions and cities, sometimes reportedly without any resistance. Obviously, they're also backed by 4,000 Rwandan soldiers. Do you think this increases the risk of a wider regional conflict if this continues?
If this continues, yes, it will escalate into a wider regional conflict. The reason for that is basically it's the dissatisfaction of the locals towards their government that fuels that. Anywhere in the eastern part today in DRC, what we are witnessing is a dissatisfied people. It's something like, in the neighboring Pakistan, when the Baloch people are dissatisfied with the government, they take up the arms. Now here what has happened is the outside forces, the Rwandan forces, have come and helped them. Now, so what is happening? USA yesterday sanctioned a minister from Rwanda. Today they call for a peace. Marco Rubio called for a peace, immediate ceasefire, but it's not giving results on the ground. The reason for that is, as my co-panelist said, very, very clear. The resource-rich land is not being exploited to the fullest. And the outside powers have a huge interest in gaining control over the land. For that cobalt, what we are talking about, China gets 70% of the cobalt that DRC produces. Now just imagine.
Yes.
That is used for the lithium batteries. Now it's a situation, you'll be surprised if someone is not interested. Outsiders are not interested. And when outsiders are interested, lots and lots of things go in, as we know. And in a land of Africa, where a few arms could be handful to so many people's lives, and that is what is exactly we are watching in DRC. that this is happening
Yes.
in eastern part.
Dr. Nadu, I wanted to come to you next. Could you talk about the richness of the land in Eastern DRC, and also talk about the possibility of American involvement in the region after Marco Rubio's statement? Possible involvement.
There is always a talk about the mineral resources that are found in the eastern part of the DRC. And of course, when there are citizens who recognize themselves as the citizens of the DRC, but they don't get any form of attention from the government, other governments who have got an interest would therefore want to take advantage of that, because in any way, the best for them would be to try to be seen as being accommodative to these people, and indeed also want to take over that portion of land which appears to be neglected by the government. The only thing that the government appears to be interested in are the resources that are found in that area. Now, the participation of other countries, mostly outside the region, would be influenced by a number of factors. The first factor would be maybe they want to see peace and stability happening in that area, and such will be influenced by their participation in other international bodies that are interested in peace. Another form of participation or interest in such areas will be, of course, the desire to get access to the mineral resources in that area, so that in whatever happens, when there is peace or when there is calm, they could also be easily be able to get access to such resources. Other countries will mainly participate because they feel that when there is fight or wars, conflict, it is not good for humanity, and they'll love to participate in ensuring that such do happen. But my view is that it will be very important for countries who are trying their best to...
I am very sorry, Dr. Nadu. We believe to be having network issues. Thank you very much, General A.K. Sawach. Thank you very much, Dr. Levi Nadu, for joining us. We'll now move to some more news updates from across the world. New reports suggest the US is pressuring Ukraine to grant American companies to access its material resources, with Starlink access even on the line. President Zelensky says he hopes for a fair deal. Let's look at the full report.
The US is urging Ukraine to sign a deal allowing American companies access to key mineral resources. Musk commented that he may limit Ukraine's access to Starlink internet if a minerals agreement isn't reached. Zelensky says he hopes for a fair minerals agreement, signaling resistance to US demands for resource access.
Сьогодні команди України і США працюють над проектом угоди між нашими урядами. Це угода, яка може додати нашим відносинам і, головне, деталі зробити так, щоб це могло спрацювати. Я сподіваюся на результат, на справедливий результат.
Ukraine holds significant reserves of lithium, titanium, and nickel critical materials for military and tech industries. Washington wants mineral access as part of reparations for US military aid given to Ukraine under Biden. Starlink has been crucial for Ukraine's military communications. A cutoff could weaken Ukrainian forces on the front lines. Several US companies are interested in securing mining rights in Ukraine, with negotiations intensifying. With US pressure mounting, will Ukraine agree to resource deals, or could this create new diplomatic tensions? Bureau Report. NewsX.
Now let's take a look at some news updates from the Indo-Pacific. The Philippines has officially been removed from the Financial Action Task Force's grey list after nearly 4 years. This follows improvements in addressing dirty money risks, casino junkets and unregistered remittance operators. The FATF commended the country for progress, but called for continued efforts against terrorism financing. This move will simplify international money transfers, reduce compliance costs, attract investments, and enhance financial transparency. The Philippines' exit is seen as a key step in strengthening its financial system and maintaining global confidence. In Jakarta, traditional horse-drawn carriages face criticism over the poor treatment of horses. This includes neglect, malnutrition and abuse practices. The low earnings from rides force owners to cut back on care, while weak enforcement of animal welfare laws persists. Activists call for gradual phase-out of the practice due to harsh conditions and financial struggles faced by drivers. Despite government commitments to animal welfare, change remains slow. ANT's budget. The Thai government plans to raise the senior allowance to 1,000 baht per month for all citizens over 60. Currently, the allowance increases with age up to 1,000 baht for those over 90. The Prime Minister's Secretary, Somkid Kong, dismissed the opposition claims that the government rejected senior subsidy bills, stating they were financially unfeasible. He pointed to a proposed pension scheme that would require over 400 billion baht, which is beyond the government's budget. President Prabowo Subianto is hosting a week-long boot camp for regional leaders to align them with his government's policies. This comes despite opposition from the Indonesian Democratic Party of Struggle following a bribery arrest. The retreat faces a partial boycott and protests over budget cuts affecting public services and jobs. Prabowo's administration is under scrutiny for its populist promises, rising government spending, and concerns about corruption. The retreat aims to strengthen coordination and push for ambitious growth targets. Myanmar has sent back more than 100 Chinese nationals linked to scam centres. This is the third group targeted in a crackdown of human trafficking. Many of these workers who were trafficked are being repatriated through Thailand, with more expected in coming weeks. Authorities in Myanmar and Thailand are strengthening efforts to address these cross-border scam operations. China has praised the collaboration between the three nations in tackling the problem. South Korea has condemned Japan's ongoing territorial claims over the dispute islets known as Dokko in South Korea and Tangshima in Japan. The South Korean Ministry of Foreign Affairs rejected Japan's sovereignty assertions, stressing that Dokko is an integral part of South Korean territory. South Korea also objected to the presence of a senior Japanese official at the Takeshima Day event in Shimane Prefecture. The islets claimed by South Korea, Japan and North Korea are currently under South Korean control. US President Donald Trump has gone on firing army chiefs and generals, causing a major upheaval in the Pentagon. Meanwhile, Pentagon announces 5 to 8% of civilian employees, adding to controversies. Here is a report.
US President Donald Trump fired the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Air Force General, and pushed 5 other admirals in an unprecedented shake-up of US military leadership. Trump said in a post on Truth Social that he would nominate former Lieutenant General Dan Kane as the new Air Force General, breaking with tradition by pulling someone out of retirement for the first time to become the top military officer. The president will also replace the head of the US Navy, a position held by Admiral Lisa Franchetti, the first woman to lead a military service, as well as the Air Force Vice Chief of Staff. While the Pentagon's civilian leadership changes from one administration to the next, the uniformed members of the US Armed Forces are meant to be apolitical, carrying out the policies of Democratic and Republican administrations. During last year's presidential campaign, Trump spoke of firing woke generals and those responsible for the troubled 2021 pullout from Afghanistan. Trump praised General Charles Brown for his 40 years of service as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, however, had questioned Brown's appointment, suggesting in his 2024 book that race played a role. Brown, a former fighter pilot, has spoken about facing discrimination in the military. Meanwhile, the Pentagon has announced its plans to fire 5 to 8% of the military civilian employees, which could measure up to 5,400 employees. While that is a small percentage of the probationary employees who are at risk of being fired en masse, the eventual cuts could amount to a significant reduction in the civilian workforce. Bureau Report, NewsX.
Now let's take a look at some news updates from across Europe. A 17-year-old suspect has been arrested in connection with a grenade attack on a crowded bar in Grenoble, France. The incident, which happened on February the 12th, left 15 people injured. Initially detained for a separate drug-related case, the teenager implicated himself over the attack before retracting his statement. Investigators believe the incident is linked to gang violence, not terrorism. Apple has announced it will stop full end-to-end encryption for UK customers after the British government demanded access to global data. The tech company stated that UK users will have to disable its advanced data protection feature. While Apple has denied building any backdoor to its services, UK officials argue that lawful access to encrypted data is necessary for security and crime prevention. French Prime Minister François Bayrou is under growing pressure after claims surfaced that he ignored sexual abuse allegations at a Catholic school in the 1990s. Prosecutors are investigating over 100 complaints of abuse at the Notre Dame de Barthéram school, with several suspects charged. Bayrou denies the wrongdoing, but his political opponents argued that the government failed to act sooner. The scandal continues to grow, with more victims coming forward. A German court has ruled that Birkenstock sandals cannot be classified as works of art, dismissing the company's claim for copyright protection against copycats. The brand had hoped to prevent rivals from selling similar versions of its iconic cork-soled footwear. While once considered uncool, Birkenstocks have gained popularity, especially after appearing in the 2023 Barbie movie. The brand's value has soared, reaching $8.6 billion after its 2023 stock market listing. A German court has ruled that Birkenstock sandals cannot be classified as works of art, dismissing the company's claim for copyright protection against copycats. The brand hoped to prevent rivals from selling similar versions of its cork-soled footwear. This is repeated again. The European Commission is set to fast-track the approval process for biopesticides and biocontrol technologies in its response to lengthy delays that are driving innovation away from Europe. The new rules, expected later this year, aim to streamline the approval process and make market access easier for alternative pest control solutions. This follows increasing concerns that Europe's outdated regulatory framework is hindering competition. Companies have turned to markets in North America and Brazil for quicker approval timelines. North Korea has condemned recent US military drills, accusing Washington and its allies of escalating tensions. Pyongyang warns it will counter these provocations with its own military actions. Let's delve deeper into the details with our report.
North Korea's defense ministry has condemned recent military drills by the US and its allies, calling them military provocations. In a statement, Pyongyang accused Washington and its allies of threatening its security through joint exercises and a US military presence in South Korea. North Korea's official KCNA news agency reported that the country is prepared to counter what it sees as a growing strategic threat. The statement emphasized Pyongyang's intention to continue its own military activities in response to these perceived provocations. This follows the recent joint air drills between the US and South Korea, which included the participation of a B-1 billion strategic bomber. North Korea has long viewed such military exercises as rehearsals for war, escalating tensions in the region. North Korea's defense minister has stated that military provocations are becoming more pronounced under the current Trump administration. Bureau Report, NewsX.
And that is all we have time for. We will continue to bring you more news updates from across the world.